Hello, everyone. Welcome to another One Mission DMD podcast conversations video. In today's video, we're going to be talking with my good friend Saleha Sherwani, who I've known since undergrad. She's currently a D4 at Asdoh, and I asked her to come on to this episode to talk about the very unique experience that Asdoh caters for the fourth year students. So she's going to talk to us about that today. Yo, Saleha, what's up? How's it going?
Hey, how's it going, Teham?
Doing well. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this episode, Saleha.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. An honor.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. What got you into dentistry and just where you're at today?
Absolutely. So I was definitely not foreign to the dental office as a child. I've had several fillings done, root canals done, I had braces, and I always loved how the dentists and their team made me feel and how they made me feel comfortable and prioritized my health and my well-being. And so I loved how they were able to give back and take care of me, and I really appreciated that. So I love that aspect of dentistry, and I also love working with my hands, doing arts and crafts and creative things of that nature. So I also love how dentistry ties that in as well. So it's more than just the science, it's also the art that's involved.
So when it comes to the fourth year at Asdoh, a lot of people have questions regarding the experience that you can get. So can you tell us a little bit about how the externships work and just how it all goes down, what you can expect from it?
Sure. So in your fourth year at Asdoh, you go on rotations every other month to a community health center across the country. So it's an estimate of 65 centers that we have hosting, but they're constantly adding and removing from the list. So it just varies year per year, month to month at times. But Asdoh is really well known for this because it's a very unique opportunity for dental students. We're one of the only dental schools that allows students to travel at the capacity that they do. Most dental schools across the country do have external rotations, but they are either within the city or within the state or a neighboring state. Whereas Asdoh, like I said, is across the country. We can go all the way up to Seattle or Pennsylvania or Texas. So it's pretty spread out, which is nice. So you get an opportunity to not only travel, but also see patients in other states, communities of different backgrounds. You get to interact with doctors and students of different backgrounds. So it's a pretty unique experience, and it definitely sets Asdoh apart from any other school in the country.
I know you just said that there's about 60 plus sites. So how many can a D4 student at Asdoh expect to go visit?
So the minimum you should expect is about 4. Every student is required to go on at least 3 to 4, depending on the requirements that year, or with COVID, things have been different, but you can expect to go on 4, and oftentimes there's an additional one offered in the summer. So you can go between 4 and 5.
Okay, and so how does it go? Like, does the student have a choice in terms of what sites they want to go to?
So you're provided a list of available rotations, and you go through, assess them based on your preferences and what works for you to your best knowledge. And then you go ahead and you list them on and you rank them. And after that, it's a match system. So based on the match, if you get the available site at the time your number or your name is picked, then you get that. And if not, you'll move on and search for another site.
Okay, so I'm assuming D3 years when these students decide to pick on visiting certain sites. So what would you recommend for these students to place in terms of importance to create this ranking of the sites? What would you recommend to them?
So I think the most important thing to keep in mind is clinical experience. You're really wanting to take advantage of getting the best clinical experience you can during your fourth year at Asdoh, or any dental school for that matter, because you're just getting geared up to go out into the real world and practice. So I think keeping in mind clinical experience is the most important thing. You're often informed on that list that you're provided of all the rotations. You're told what procedures are generally offered or provided at the clinic that you're going to be going to. They give an estimate. Sometimes it changes based on situation or timing or provider. But I think placing importance on clinical experience is key.
I know at Asdoh our class size is like around 75 or 78, somewhere around there. So would you say it's kind of competitive requesting certain sites amongst your entire class?
It can be. There's certain sites that'll always be competitive across the board in every class. And then some of the sites are competitive based on your particular class, especially if one of the sites is a hometown for a lot of students in your class. So it just depends. It can be competitive. You also can just get lucky. You can also get unlucky. So it just depends.
Okay, so what site are you at right now? I think you said you were at a site at this time, right?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Seattle. So I'm at the Seattle rotation right now, and it's cold and rainy, but it's really fun and unique since I'm from Texas. So it's definitely nice weather and something different.
Right. So what kind of work have you been doing there so far at this clinic?
So the Seattle rotation is known to be mostly operative, so fillings, and it's just been phenomenal experience because I've gotten to see a variety of cases and learn from the providers here and see how they approach things and work with different materials and instruments. So I really, really, really value my experience here so far.
Are you like the only student dentist at these clinics that you go to, or is it just different depending on which site you're going to if you can be with another student provider?
It's just like what you mentioned, ladder. It just depends on the clinic. So some clinics will have other students from other schools rotating through that clinic. If you're in Arizona, it can often be the Midwestern students, or Chicago can be Midwestern. In Houston, it can be the UT Houston students. So it just depends on the clinic you go to and the timing. Sometimes your timing won't coincide, so you'll be there at a different time than them. So it just depends. Sometimes you're the only student, sometimes you're there with other classmates from your own class, and then sometimes we'll be there with students from other schools.
Gotcha. So prior to the Seattle location that you're at right now, where else have you gone so far?
So my first rotation was in Houston, my hometown. My second rotation was in Chicago, and this is my third one in Seattle.
Gotcha. Wow. So you're already on your third location right now?
Yeah, it's crazy. Time flies. I feel like I was just starting my first one yesterday.
That's awesome. So that means you're probably going to be doing more than four until before you graduate, right?
Well, I'm just supposed to have one more coming up, so in 2 months. However, I'm currently unassigned because that one got canceled. So I'll find out in the coming months what arises.
And I think that one got canceled due to like the premature nature of like how COVID was like happening and when the school just opened and stuff, right? Is that the reason it got canceled?
Exactly, yeah. That one hasn't been open to any of my classmates for this year due to COVID.
So how do finances come into play in terms of funding for all of the traveling and the housing and the rental car and everything like that? If you can speak a little bit about that.
That's a great question. So finances, it also just depends on the clinic and the rotation. So that list that I was speaking of that you're given in your D3 year to go through and pick for your rotations, it has next to them which rotations have stipends or housing covered or a car covered or nothing covered. So it really depends on if the clinic and the rotation. And then on top of that, the tuition includes extra financial aid package for you to help students out for those who have to pay for additional things throughout their rotation. So I know of very few rotations that cover you completely, like housing, car. There's maybe one that also gives you a stipend for food as well. So for the most part, for certain aspects of your rotation, you will be spending on your own. And like I said, in the financial aid package, there's usually an extra amount allotted for that.
Okay, so basically, if a student's traveling to a location site, they have to pay for all this stuff. They're additionally going to have to continue paying for their housing and everything in Phoenix at the same time, right?
Yeah, so whatever you leave in Phoenix, that's totally on you. Like if you're in an apartment and you're paying rent or for any other bills, yeah, that you would still have to pay that. That's just since you're leaving that spot.
So, Saleha, what would you tell someone who would say that due to the finances and the funding of it, additionally on top of the living expenses in Arizona, if they're saying it's not worth it to pay extra to go to these clinics and just pay for all these things, what would you tell that person?
I think that's a great question, Deham. I will say that these clinical rotations and the clinical experience that you're getting is absolutely invaluable. At the end of the day, we're all going to have loans, we're all going to have all this tuition. And I feel like spending this amount, which in the long run won't be a lot, is really worth it to further your clinical experience and gain this knowledge that you may not gain elsewhere. Traditionally, it's known for Asdoh students to not need a residency to supplement their education. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an AEGD or a GPR or any residency. However, at times you may not necessarily need it to feel more comfortable in your clinical skills because of these clinical rotations you go on, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. So at the end of the day, no dental student across the country, aside from certain states, require you to do a residency, but I feel like as an Asdoh student, especially after going through these rotations and getting this clinical experience, you definitely feel pretty comfortable to go out into the workforce.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I think it just goes back to the fact that because of the breadth in the amount, just because of the amount of different clinics there are, each clinic is known for doing something different. So is that the reason you think why everyone's getting a lot of experience that's beneficial?
That's definitely a reason. I think I personally could even say I've benefited from going to all these clinics. Like I said, using all these different materials, learning from the preceptors, learning their techniques. Another big reason is the patient flow. At the clinic at Asdoh and at most dental schools, you're only seeing 2 patients a day. However, on a rotation, you can expect to see anywhere from 2 patients a day to 8 patients a day. And that's really nice because you're getting the opportunity to really expand your horizons and getting a good taste of actual practicing dentistry as you would as a practicing dentist. So I think, like I said, that experience is really invaluable and you wouldn't get elsewhere or until you get to the workforce. So it's nice to kind of get that preview beforehand while also being mentored by your preceptors at these rotation sites.
So do you think that going to these sites and seeing just a different type of a clinic, do you think it's improved your speed at which you work even in the clinic here in school when you come back from those rotation sites?
Yes, I definitely feel like it's improved my overall dentistry and my hand skills and my efficiency. I feel like when you start off in third year, you're used to doing everything a certain way at the school. Like everything has to be set up here, you have to pick it up here, you do this step and you talk to this person. Whereas when you go out on rotation, that's not an option. Yes, oftentimes your assistants will set up for you. However, you get used to adversity and using different materials, not being used to the same thing. And I think that's great, again, for when you go out and actually practice dentistry. Everything's not going to be just like school. So I feel like I'm already comfortable with using different things and also just being a little bit faster in making those decisions as well, which sounds silly, but when you get so used to something, you want to just stick to that. So I feel like rotations have made me accept adversity in the dental chair and just work with new things.
I know a lot of the students get to do a lot of the work that maybe some other students at other institutions may not be able to due to the fact that there's residency programs for those schools. So my question is at these locations that you go to, are there specialists there that are your like clinic directors, or are they mostly general dentists?
So that's also a great question. I think that also depends on the clinic. So certain clinics do have specialists who sit there, such as oral surgeons, endodontists, pediatric dentists, and it just depends on the clinic you go to. So not every rotation has those. So far, none of the rotations I've been to have had a specialist.
So what would you tell someone who would say that they don't want to consider going to ASDO because they don't have the specialty I'm looking for? What would you tell that person?
So I would say that I think it's very important to get a well-rounded dental education despite the specialty you're interested in. I hope that everyone acquires the specialty that they want to go to in their future. However, if it doesn't work out, you do have the opportunity to be a general dentist. And in order to do so, you should be a well-rounded general dentist. And I think in order to do so, you should make sure your education depicts that. So I feel like really taking in and soaking in your experiences from the rotation will only make you a better dentist in general, and then hopefully further in your further specialty. I have plenty of friends and classmates who are seeking out specialties or have already matched to specialties, and I've also seen them take their clinical rotations very seriously, and work towards bettering themselves in things that they may not even end up doing in their specialties, only just to be a better dentist. So I think it's important to still value your education and be a well-rounded general dentist despite what is in your future.
So do you feel comfortable practicing after school? Like, how do you feel regarding all the experience that you've gotten so far?
I'm really thankful for my experience at Asdoh thus far, from the school clinic and then especially from the rotations. I feel like I've really gotten the opportunity to try a diverse amount of procedures, learn from all these preceptors and my clinical directors and doctors at the school. I feel pretty comfortable with the experience I've gotten to get so far, but I do recognize that as a dentist, you're always learning. All my faculty, who's much older than I am, often remind me that they're still learning every day with me. So I think that that's a comforting piece of advice, and also just a reminder that you're a student for life once you join the profession. So despite that, I do feel like the rotations and my clinical experience thus far have prepared me. So I feel pretty comfortable so far.
What would be one thing that you'd recommend to any D3 or D4 student that's about to go into the clinic and start working on patients?
I think I would say be confident. You know exactly what you're doing. You've practiced plenty of times in sim. You have the personality to be where you are. So I think definitely be confident and really embrace dentistry and be ready to learn. Another thing I'd say is to keep an open mind. As I mentioned before, you're always a student. The learning doesn't stop here. And so embracing that early will just make this journey so much easier. And if you do those things and are just ready to buckle in that seatbelt for the ride of dentistry, I think you'll be A-okay. It's such a fun time. Dentistry is fun. I wake up every day excited to do what I do, and I hope everyone feels the same.
All right, well, that concludes episode 5 of the One Mission DMD podcast series. Saleha, thank you so much for sitting down with us and having a conversation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone. And keep following One Mission DMD.
Hey, you heard it from her. Subscribe to the channel and like this video if you like what we're doing here. All right. Thanks. Take care, Saleha.